This is the Red Podcast.
It's Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for experts. If you have a message to spread, you want more people to care about it, you want to build a bigger audience for it, you want to do it in a more compelling way, you are in the right place. My name is David Hooper. For years, one of the top things that experts have done to spread their messages has been to get in front of live audiences. And these aren't just speakers per se. I'm talking about musicians, experts, authors, pastors, comics, politicians, anybody with a message. One of the most powerful ways to connect is to get in front of somebody or a group of people face to face. But we're in a strange time right now. Thanks to COVID-19, the speaking industry, or even getting in front of somebody face to face, even one-on-one, that's been turned on its head. I'm taking my dog outside about 8 times a day right now. I just got to get out of the house. And every time I do, when I see somebody on the street, cross the street. When you see somebody on one side of the street and also the other side of the street, you walk down the middle of the road. It's not considered weird or rude or racist or paranoid to cross the street right now. Everybody's giving you a pass. Hey, we get it. COVID-19. Don't want to get too close to people. Other than my wife, it's been a couple of weeks since I've been closer than 8 or 10 feet from somebody. That's when I was in the grocery store, couldn't help myself. A lot of people are living their lives like that. But that doesn't mean that people don't want to connect with somebody in a personal way. We still want that. And we've expanded the ways in which we're doing it. That brings in a whole new set of skills that we need to learn, like getting good on video, learning how to use the video, learning how to do all sorts of technical stuff because we're in our houses and not doing this face-to-face stuff that we didn't have to do before. And just like a lot of people feel about speaking in a group, that can be scary as hell. Personally, I hate video. I'm an audio guy. I do video when I have to, when I'm working with somebody or working on a group coaching call, but I would much rather do audio or do a live event. Everybody's got their thing. Some people don't like radio. Believe me, I've seen that a lot. When I do my syndicated show, we do that from a broadcast radio station. People come in live. We sit in a little studio together. They will not wear headphones because they don't like the sound of their voice. They find it distracting. They're used to hearing it through bone conduction. When they don't have that, when they hear the playback, it sounds weird to them. They get nervous or insecure. So think about this changing world that we're in. If you're like a lot of people, you're delivering your messages in different ways than you were previously. There are a couple of things that you can do to make delivering those messages easier. The first is preparing. Getting comfortable with your message itself. Knowing the ins and the outs of it. So when something happens that you consider a distraction, such as hearing your own voice in your headphones, you know that message in and out. It's easy to get back on track, deliver it in a solid way that people are going to connect with. The second is being comfortable with not only your message, but yourself as a person. For this episode, I did an interview with a guy named James Hayden. He's interesting for a few reasons. In fact, one of the most interesting public speakers that I've ever met. But his public speaking career almost never happened because he had that thing that the people suffer from when they walk in my radio studio and they don't want to wear headphones. He didn't like the way his voice sounded. But he's worked around that. He had an interesting path of getting there. He's going to talk about that in this interview. He's also done something a lot of people want to do, a lot of people ask me about, and that is to speak at a TEDx event. In this interview, we talk about not only the speaking at the TEDx event, but what he did to prepare to make that happen, how he got the gig, what he did to make it happen, how he came up with the concept, how he reworked the concept. We talked about the performance. We talked about what happened afterwards and how his life has changed because of it. I think you're going to get something out of this, even if you don't want to speak live. The process is great for interviews, for getting a book together, just about anything where you have to present information. even the smaller stuff, blog posts and emails. You're probably not going to go to the level that he went through to deliver this TEDx talk, but thinking about organizing your information, I think that's going to help you. Hey, speaking of books, he has a book too. We talk about that as well. He's a super cool guy. He's got a great story. He's got a great message. So without further delay, this is my interview with James Hayden. I want to go into your background quickly. You refer to yourself as a person who stutters, PWS.
Yes. About 1% of the population, stutter. And we are a very tight-knit community. I'm involved in different Facebook groups that are filled with other people that stutter, and it is a place where we can go and share our like triumphs with stuttering. We can vent about stuttering. We can, support one another, because stuttering sucks. Stuttering is rough, and to be able to share with people that truly get it is such an incredible thing to be a part of. And it's a community I've only been a part of for about, about 4 years now.
One of the things that I notice about working with people, and I think the internet is great about this, is that just as individuals, there's something about us and we feel like we're the only one going through that. But one of the great things about the internet is it shows you that the world is big, and it shows you you're not the only one. And I think that's one of the great things about podcasting, is that we can have these little bitty shows that aren't maybe ready for broadcast radio or big television, cable television, broadcast television. And it does allow these groups to connect. Did you feel like growing up that you were the only one?
Yes. So I did not meet another person that stutters until I was 22, 23 years old. And so growing up, I thought I was the only person that did stutter, because no one in my life stuttered. And I realized maybe at the age of like 11, 12 years old that I wasn't the only person, but I still didn't know, or I didn't know anyone that stuttered until I was 22 years old.
And is this something you've had your entire life?
Yeah. For the most part. I started stuttering around the age of 3, 4 years old, 5. Went to speech therapy up until I was 12 years old. And then from about 12 to 18, I did not consider myself a person that stuttered. I remember a couple instances where I did stutter during that stretch, but for the most part, I thought that I outgrew my stutter, and that would be the end of it. And then my senior year of high school, my stutter returned, and it's been back ever since.
Tell me about that, because that seems like that would be fairly traumatic. That time already just in somebody's life is kind of weird. You're figuring yourself out, and I bet that would not be easy to deal with.
Yeah. So like when stuttering returned my senior year, my parents and I, we attributed it to like the nerves and excitement of me, graduating high school. I was going out of state to college, where I knew at most, 5 people. But once I got acclimated to my new environment and my new settings, my stuttering would disappear and life would continue on. And that didn't happen. So my freshman and my sophomore years of college, stuttering was this embarrassing from home that everyone knew about, but no one acknowledged. Like, I didn't talk about the fact that I stuttered. If you mentioned that I did stutter, I chewed you out. And then, but the only time I did talk about stuttering was my parents would mention, "Hey, James, you need to go see, what Southern Miss has to offer in terms of speech therapy." And being the good son I am, I would always say, sure, mom and dad, I'll get to that when pigs fly, hell freezes over. Stuttering was not something I wanted to deal with. And that changed my sophomore year of college, when my uncle said the exact same thing to me as we were driving to go see the New Orleans Pelicans play. And that was my oh crap moment. Because when your parents say something that you know is right and true, but you don't want to admit it, you kind of blow them off. But when someone else that you love and care about says the exact same thing to you, you're like, dang, maybe I need to check this out. And so I did. When I got back, I emailed the speech department at my college, hoping that they would say there's nothing we could do for you and life would go on. But fortunately now and unfortunately then, I got the answer that I needed and not the answer that I wanted, which was I could begin speech therapy back in the fall semester. So my junior year of college, I began, speech therapy again. And in hindsight, it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
You've done a TEDx talk. I know from personal experience of being on stage, I've actually done a couple of episodes about it, about being on stage. And the last time I was on a big stage, I got up there and flipped out, man. I had a panic attack. And that had never happened to me. I'm somebody who is extremely comfortable on stage, or was until then.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of amazing. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you on. I want to kind of unpack the TEDx experience, because if you've got you're a person who stutters and somebody says, hey, you have an opportunity to get on stage, and there's already, even if you didn't stutter at all, you'd never stuttered, there's already pressure to perform, all eyes on you. And that's super scary. So I'd love to talk about that experience. Do you, before we get into that, do you find that in stressful situations, is the stutter more pronounced maybe?
So I like to say that I'm consistently inconsistent. Like stress and nerves and excitement don't cause me to stutter, but they don't help my stuttering. Like I can be perfectly calm and like stutter on every other word, but I can also be stressed out and be perfectly fluent. It just depends on the day, honestly.
Let's talk about the TEDx experience, and also I'm going to combine the podcasting stuff that you've done with this, because it sounds to me like you weren't maybe even acknowledging that this was happening at first, and probably weren't doing any kind of public speaking, and now you are a lot.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be? How did you decide that you wanted to get into public speaking and also do things like this, like a podcast interview?
So it kind of goes back to kind of on my book being released and all that. So in February of 2017, I like guest lectured at a local university, and I loved it. And at the same time, the job that I had at the time wasn't really working out, and I didn't know what I could do. And so I was just, trying to figure out what the next step was. So between the I guest lectured, realized that I liked it, and it was cathartic for me to talk about stuttering. And it's something that I wanted to do as often as I could. So I sent out I emailed different, colleges and whatnot to see if I could do it. And over the past couple of years, I've talked to about 9 or 10 different universities. And like the public speaking, it helped me realize that I like to talk about stuttering, which is ironic because like me from 5 years ago did not want to talk about stuttering whatsoever. And now it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So realizing that I liked to talk about stuttering, that led me into writing the book. And the book has led me to guest lecture at a variety of places. So with the TEDx talk, I was about a year into the public speaking thing. And it was June of 2018. I was hanging out with my best friend, and I looked at him and I said, I want to give a TED Talk one day. He's like, okay. But I never thought doing a TED Talk would come, this soon. So in February of this year, I got an email from my company saying that we were putting on the first, TEDx event. And my first reaction was, holy crap, this is my opportunity to give a TED Talk. But then self-doubt quickly told me, what do I have to say? What is my idea worth spreading? And I went back and forth on whether or not I should apply or not. And about a week after the email came out, I had a chance meeting with the guy that was putting on the event. I gave him my elevator pitch, and he liked it and told me to apply. So I did. And then after about 3 rounds of interviewing over a month and a half, I was one of the 12 picked. And my first reaction was, holy crap, I'm giving a TED Talk. This is a bucket list item achieved. And then I immediately thought, holy crap, I'm giving a TED Talk. This is terrifying. And so I spent the next 2 months, rehearsing and practicing, drafting, rehearsing of my TED Talk until the big day came on June 12th.
Let me pause you right there because I want
Yes.
to talk about the rehearsal process. There are rules for a TED Talk. It has to be, how many minutes do they give you?
Max is 18. Minimum is 5.
So 5 to 18 minutes, and they have certain qualifications within that. Does it have to have a takeaway? Does it have to have an introduction? What are the other rules that they give you?
So the big idea is, what's your why? What are you challenging the audience to do after they walk away, from your talk? And the way that TED is formatted, is given in a way that I've never done before. Cause so in May, we had 2 days of rehearsals of just, drafting and editing and practicing and rehearsing and more practicing. And I went in there with one talk, and about 10 minutes in, I realized that my talk was complete garbage, and I had to redo it. Because typically I say, hi, my name is James Hayden. I'm 26. I do this. I work as a HLA. I'm a writer. I'm a person who stutters. And then I go into my talk. Whereas with TED, you don't introduce yourself. You go directly into it, and your opening paragraph is something to get the audience's attention, whether you tell them to imagine, this situation, or you ask them a rhetorical question. You want them to be grabbed immediately, which was something I've never done before. So those 2 days were beyond stressful because I was writing and rewriting my TED Talk every hour or so.
Let's talk about that. So there's 2 days, and you're working with all the other people who were selected because they like their ideas.
Yes.
And did TED bring somebody in to work with you, or was that just the local person that maybe had guidelines or something?
So we had some speaker coaches who some were employees of my company, and then others they did TEDx at other places, and they were brought in to help us out.
So they've been through the process. They're mentoring you.
Yeah.
They're like the Sherpa. Take it back to the stress level. I would think that, you think you're getting into one thing, mm-hmm. and then you find out it's something completely different after you've been picked. And as you said, your speech is changing every hour. That would make me nervous. Mm-hmm. And all the while you're getting closer and closer to that date.
Yeah. It was a rough month and a half for me speech wise, because not only, was I getting ready for TED, I had a certification exam, for my job that was 2 weeks after my TED talk. And then a week after that, I had a presentation at the NSA conference. So I had a stressful month and a half, and my speech was definitely impacted by that.
Yeah. Did you feel ready by the time they worked you through that process? Did you feel, or as ready as you could be, I guess?
Yeah. And then even after those 2 days, I still met with like the speaker coaches. I still went over it a bunch of times on my own. But on June 11th, the day before, we did a dress rehearsal, and I felt as ready as I was going to be for my TED talk.
And how many times had you been through the speech by the time you got to the dress rehearsal?
Hundreds, maybe.
You were prepared. Was everybody that prepared, or is that just you?
I think everybody was. Everybody was. We knew that this was going to be a big deal.
Yeah. So
we were ready. We were prepared.
I love the confidence. See, I would think I would be doubting that. I'd be, you think you're prepared, and then you get into it. It's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until somebody punches you in the face.
Right.
Was that Mike Tyson? Sylvester Stallone? One of them.
Sure, we'll go with Mike Tyson.
Either one.
Either one. We'll go with it.
They've been through the process. You trusted them. You got on stage. Dress rehearsal. You're as ready as you will ever be. Mm-hmm. And the next day comes. Cameras are there. An audience is there. You know that this thing is going to be on YouTube. I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe they don't put everything on YouTube, but potentially a lot of people are going to see this.
Yeah. So the big day arrives, and I was nervous. I was excited. I was running on adrenaline that day.
What happens when you get nervous?
I do tend to stutter more, but I am a bundle of nerves, and I can't sit still.
Did you sleep well the night before?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least you had that going for you.
And I was absolutely terrified. So I went, I was the final speaker before lunch. So the entire morning I was, pacing around everywhere. I could not sit still for more than 5 minutes. And I was, trying to calm myself down, especially the hour before.
And how do you do that? Pedro talks about doing breathing techniques. I guess his speech therapist had talked to him about. And do you have something like that, or what do you do to calm yourself down?
So that's what I was doing. I was doing different, breathing and relaxation techniques, which I, before my TEDx talk, had not used in maybe 3 or 4 years. Like, I was doing every trick and technique in the book to calm myself down, to get, ready for my talk. The guy before me, I could not tell you what he said. I had to go back and watch it, because I was just that exhilarated, nervous, and terrified.
And they call you, they say, presenting James Hayden.
Mm-hmm.
You walk out. Do you remember that part?
Yeah. So I remember, taking a deep breath, walking onto the red dot, and telling myself it's going to come out the way it's going to come out, and it's going to be okay. And I was filled with a mixture of nerves and excitement and terror, sheer terror. And not because I was public speaking, but it was because it was TED. This is a TED talk. This is a massive deal. I was speaking to 300 people, which is the largest audience I've ever talked to. And it was being, live streamed to 25,000 other people. And I couldn't see my audience. It was just me on a stage with a bunch of lights in my face.
Is that good or is that bad for you? Some people love it, and some people, it makes them feel disconnected from the audience.
I like seeing my audience. I like being able to interact with them and feed off of their energy. So I stepped on the red dot, told myself it was going to come out the way it's going to come out, and spent the next 5 minutes stuttering on nearly every single word in my entire talk, but it was okay. And then after that, I got a standing ovation, walked backstage and celebrated as hard as I ever have. Like, I hugged every single person back there.
Did it feel good though? I mean, you talked about like not remembering the guy before. Were you still kind of in that phase after you walked out? Kind of like, do you know what I mean? It's like, like you're watching yourself from above almost.
A little bit, but like towards the end, I realized what was going on. It's like, I just gave a TED talk. Holy crap. Like this is something that I've been wanting to do, and I accomplished it sooner than I thought I would.
Yeah.
And then after my talk, and after I like celebrate with everyone, I had to take a few minutes, by myself and just kind of reflect on what I just did and like the progress, that I made over the past, 5-6 years. Because, 21-year-old James never in a million years would have done a TED talk and stutter that openly to a group of strangers. And 26-year-old James, just did that. And I took a moment because I was overcome with emotion of just, how far I've come over the past, 5 years.
Well, that's one of the reasons I reached out to you. I read a post that you had done on themighty.com. And there is something really inspiring for somebody to get out on stage or write something and put it out and just lay it all out there. You're not trying to hide, no BS. I mean, so many of us, we have masks or, we try to be better than we are.
Right.
And it's like, nope, this is it. Take it or leave it. And it is inspiring. That's why you're here.
Thank you.
So it sounded like the audience connected with you as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that I do what I do and like look for these opportunities, whether it's doing a podcast like this or like writing different articles, is to be the person that I needed when I was younger, to be someone that uses whatever platforms that they have to stutter openly and to say it's okay to stutter, and that stuttering is not who you are, but one of the many things that make you you. And I think that's why I do what I do, because I didn't have that person, growing up, and I want to be that person for someone else, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, mentorship is huge. And you mentioned having the guys that got you through the TED Talk, they showed you a process and it worked out better because of them. I think sometimes, though, we don't realize our ability to influence others and don't realize how much we've been through or how much specialized knowledge that we have and how important that is, because we are so far removed from those times.
Yeah.
So part of that, you've got the book that's called Dear World, I Stutter. Talk about that. Talk about the message that people will find when they get that. Is that for people who stutter, or is that for everybody?
For everyone. So it consists of 25 open letters to people that have been or will be on my journey with stuttering. I write a letter, to my parents. I write a letter to my uncle who maybe realized I need to go back to speech therapy. I wrote a letter to the waiter that laughed at my stutter. I wrote a letter, to my stutter, to my younger self, to my future self, to my future wife, to my future kids, to the person that they said that they felt sorry for me because I stutter, to my friends, to my coworkers, to the first girl to see past my stutter, to my speech therapist, to other speech therapists, to other people that stutter. And there's a few more that I can't remember off the top of my head.
So I want to take you back to young James.
Yes.
Young James, before you did the book, before you did TED Talk, and you mentioned, you said, hell no, I would not think I would be doing this in a million years. What would young James have thought would have happened had you gone out on stage or had you written a book and being more open? Where were you during that time?
Are we talking like young James when I was 10 or young James when I was, 2021?
Let's do both. Did it change between the time you were 10 and 21?
Yeah, because when I was 10, it was just still like, am I the only person that stutters? Can people see past the fact that I stutter? Will I be able to get a like good job? And I was just in this bubble of I'm the only person in the world that stutters, and I don't know anyone else that does stutter. So 10-year-old me never would have imagined any of this happening. 10-year-old me wanted to be a like meteorologist, and that would have been good. I never really thought about stuttering back then. And then 20-year-old me would have never done this in a million years because he did not want to talk about stuttering. 20-year-old James knew that he stuttered, but did not want to admit it because he was embarrassed by it and did everything in his power to not be known for the fact that he stutters.
And what do you think the reaction 21-year-old James would have thought would have been?
21-year-old James, he like wouldn't believe any of this was happening. He's like, yeah, okay, sure. I'm giving a TED talk. Sure, man. Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. And like if I told, 21-year-old James that I was an author writing about stuttering, I don't think he would have believed me.
Would 21-year-old James think that you would get a standing ovation after that TED talk?
No. 21-year-old James wanted nothing to do with stuttering. Nothing to do with it.
So let's fast forward to now. You're doing these speeches, TEDx, a big success for you, standing ovation. People loved it. Did that come as a surprise? Even though you're more comfortable with yourself now and you've prepared and you were definitely ready for that event?
Yeah, I did not expect to get a standing ovation whatsoever. And then there's part of me that there was two parts of me. There's part of me, okay, they're standing because they like my message and that's good. Or are they standing up because I'm a person that stutters? They want me to feel better about myself because my speech was rough during those 5 minutes. And I know it's the first part, but there's still that small part of me that's like, well, are they just, are they standing up to make me feel better and they really didn't like it? But I know it's the first part that they like my message, but there's still that small part of me that's like, they're just doing it because you stutter and they want you to feel better about yourself.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. As I mentioned, the last big speech I did, I had a panic attack on stage and it was obvious and I apologized from the stage. Yeah. I wasn't trying to hide anything. When somebody texted me the next day, said, "Oh, you did great." And I was like, really? Mm-hmm. Did you see that? Did we see the same speech? I thought he was joking. But I think that's something that's common for speakers. I think there's always that bit of us that you wonder, right? Because you see the inside. You see the sausage getting made, and you know how rough it is, and you know how much work that it took to get there.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, you've inspired me because I'm a guy who traditionally wings things. And knowing that to get up there for the speech that you gave, you'd been through it 100 times. Mm-hmm. It's making me think I need to step up my game when it comes to my public speaking.
I mean, I practiced that like driving to work. I practiced it while I was at work. I practiced it in my sleep, like, getting dinner ready, practicing it, just going over and over and over and over. And even though I went over it 100 times, I still forgot some lines. But it is what it is. They got my message, so it's all good.
I found that funny about speaking. Like, it's like once you get through it where it's for real, right? You could go back and you could do it perfectly. But my wife jokes around with me. She said that when I give a talk, it's like a Grateful Dead concert. They never played the same show twice. Mm-hmm. And with me, I never give the same speech twice. So.
I'm the exact same way.
I just can't remember. Maybe it's coming from my improvisational band kind of thing, mm-hmm. where I was in a band. It's like, you just roll with things. And even like this, I've sort of planned things out, but like we talked about that quote, you got to plan till you get punched in the face. So
right.
It's interesting, I think, coming from where I am, I'm curious if this works for you. What gets you there won't get you to the next place, right? Mm-hmm. It's like your improv ability or your ability to hustle or get by or whatever, that works for a minute until it doesn't, and then you got to try something else. And there's a time when you've got to prepare and go through it 100 times. And one of us on this interview actually did that. One of us did not, and you succeeded, and I failed miserably. So I think there's a lesson there.
Thank you.
The book, it's Dear World, I Stutter, available at Amazon.com. You've also got stutteredblog.wordpress.com. I'm curious, what's next for you? You're doing these public speaking events. You've got the book. You're writing on things like themighty.com, which is very similar to Medium. What's next for you?
Just going to continue to write and to see where this whole thing takes me. Because my book came out 2 years ago on Wednesday, and I've only been writing for about 2.5 years, and it's taken me places I never dreamed possible. So I'm just going to continue, riding the ride, writing some more, reaching out to other people, and just see, where this whole thing takes me, and maybe write another book at some point. Who knows? That's in the early stages of development right now.
One more question for you, related, but sort of off topic. For somebody listening and they come upon a person who stutters, how do you react to that? What is the reaction that makes things the best way they can be? You mentioned about the waiter laughing, not a good reaction.
No.
What is the best way to react?
Maintain eye contact and just allow them to stutter in that moment, and not make not make a big deal out of it. Don't finish our sentences. That is like a major pet peeve of mine, unless someone gives you permission to that, because what you're saying is that, my voice isn't worth being heard. Like, what I have to say is worth being said. And if it takes me 5 to 10 extra seconds to say what I want to say, then so be it. And then also, like people will say, slow down, take a deep breath. There's nothing to be nervous about, etc. And it's like, I know you mean well, but those things aren't helping. So don't finish our sentences. Don't tell us to slow down, and like maintain eye contact with us, even if we don't maintain eye contact with you. And then just let us say what we need to say and continue on. Because stuttering is not who we are. It's just something that happens when we talk.
James Hayden, thank you for being here. Great advice. Stutteredblog.wordpress.com to read the writings of James. And if you want the book, Dear World, I Stutter, available on Amazon.com. Again, thanks for being here, man. I'm going to check in on you. I want to know when these next TEDx is going to be, the next TED, get you on the big stage.
That's the goal. But thank you for having me, David. Appreciate it.
James Hayden on Red Podcast. Inspiring, right? Check out the book, Dear World, I Stutter. It is available wherever books are sold. You can also hear more from James on the various podcasts that he's done. He's done a lot of them. And if you're interested in having James on your podcast, I've got all his contact information in the episode notes. Redpodcast.com is where to get those. I'll be back with a follow-up episode soon. If you want to make sure that you don't miss it or any of the Red Podcast episodes, go to this website, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. You'll see the red episode art there. Right below it, you've got your very own subscription button. If you're on an iPhone, you get a button. If you use Android, got a special button for you. And if you use the old school RSS feed, I've got a button for you. That's bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Thank you for listening to Red Podcast. I will see you on the next episode.